Hello, Radiant One, and a very big and a very warm welcome to Mastery, the show and podcast for brilliant spiritual beings just like you, having a human experience and wanting to lead with love in work, business, and life. Designed to empower, inspire, and uplift you, as well as give you down-to-earth practical guidance you can actually use and implement to live a more fulfilling and satisfying life. Here we merge the worlds of seen and unseen, magic and miracles with the mundane and the practical, spirituality with strategy, the energetic with the physical, and business, work, and life with a whole lot of love and soul. I'm your host, spiritual business coach, energy worker, and radical love rebel, Maria Saraphina. And it is my deep honor, my great pleasure, and joy to share this episode, this podcast, and this world with you. Because the more of us doing this work, the better our world becomes. In 2011, I left my successful corporate career and six-figure job. I did it because I couldn't feel my heart and I had one singular focus. Love is the way, and I want to implement that into every aspect of my work, life, and business. Naively, I thought that meant the heavens would open, angels ascend, path be cleared, and rose petal be strewn because I, so very altruistically of me, had chosen love as my way. Instead, everything and all things out of resonance with love has been illuminated to give me the opportunity to consciously choose again and do something about what I was facing from a space of love rather than from a space of fear. I did the work, and I'm proud to say that it worked. Today, I serve established business owners and experienced leaders wanting to do the same. Learn and be supported as you navigate leading with love, heart, and soul. Creating sustainable solutions I call win-win-win, meaning solutions that serve not only you and those you serve, but those that they serve as well, creating massive, uplifting ripple effects of love across our globe. I do that through one-on-one spiritual business coaching, mastermind growth pods, and the spiritual MBA, all filled with my unique combination of tailored strategic guidance, intuitive wisdom, and energetic alignment. If that ignites something in you, go to my website, mariasarafina.com, to check out my services or reach out and let's find out how I can support you. Having been called to this show and podcast, it is my strong guess that mastery is already inherent within you, Radiant One. If you'd like to own your mastery even further, download the mastery activation I've created for you. Originally released within my paid membership, The Elevation, I've now made it available for free to all. Get it at mariasarafina.com/MA. And remember, if you enjoy Mastery, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share, or leave a review to amplify the energy and love being shared in these transmissions so you can reach more and more gorgeous, radiant beings like you. Today I'm joined by Cydney Mar, a Montreal-based product development strategist who helps visionaries bring their product dreams to life. With over $300 million in sales across fashion, homewares, wellness, and more, her career spans couture to QVC and beyond. A former elite Canadian figure skater turned award-winning designer, Cydney blends creativity with strategy, offering actionable plans that turn ideas into successful businesses. She's a proud Thompson River Salish, Chinese and Scottish woman, and a loving pet mama to Princess Shiloh the mini schnauzer and Sky Angel the budgie. Cydney and I have moved in the same Facebook circles for probably close to a decade. Over the past few years, she's shared her journey of discovering and uncovering her native roots, which has been immensely interesting to follow. On top, she's such a devoted pet mama, and you never go wrong with someone who loves animals that dearly. One day, as I was sitting with whom to invite onto the show next, her name popped in loud and clear, and so without further ado, here is our sacred conversation. Cydney, welcome to Mastery. Thank you so much for saying yes to my invitation, which was, we've been in each other's spheres for probably a very long time, but I go by resonance and intuition when I do these invitations. And when your name popped out, I was like, that's so interesting. And then I started to receive some downloads, and then everything, of course, made sense to me when I made the choice to reach out to you. Would you start us off by introducing yourself? Let us know who you are and what you do in this brilliant world.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I really love enjoying and participating in these type of conversations. My name is Cydney Mar, and I live here in Montreal in our beautiful, right now, very, very cold climate, but I'm inside and all warm and cozy.
Yeah.
I am I guess, a serial entrepreneur. I started off in life as a figure skater. I skated for the Canadian championships, and so I was on the Canadian team. And then I had a terrible skating accident at the age of 18, where one of the other skaters skated into me and almost severed my leg. So with that, it was a long recovery, and so I had to figure out how to literally get on my own feet again. And because I was doing costumes and all of that for skating, I
Yes.
stepped into fashion and did my graduate studies in Vancouver because I'm born and raised West Coast girl. Everybody says, like, why are you on the East Coast? But here I am. I actually followed the work, moving to Toronto and then coming here to Montreal,
Mhm.
and then stepped into my fashion career, which was quite fabulous. I mean, I did everything from couture to high-end fashion to selling to the Bay and Eaton's, and really loved it. Ended up being invited to participate in QVC. Did TV shopping channel around the world for over 15 years. And then I got sick again, or not sick again. Let me say, I had my first near-death experience as an accident. My
Yeah.
second near-death experience was catching nothing more exciting than mono, but you're not supposed to get it when you're an adult. You're supposed to get it when you're
Right.
12,
Yeah.
15, you miss a semester. But
Mm.
instead, I ended up in the hospital fighting for my life for about 2 months.
Oh.
And they had to do an emergency surgery. My lungs were failing. I had hospital-acquired pneumonia.
Oh.
And 2 months later, almost all my hair is falling out. I had to do power of attorney to my team members because I had a design studio. And that was sort of like I'm going to say, um, creator putting up his hand saying, time to stop.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because when I was going into the OR, when they wake you up to sign
Yeah.
your life away, like I said, okay, like if I survive, just tell me what I'm supposed to do.
Mm.
Luckily enough, I did survive. And my life has been quite different in the last 10 years, where I was at that time just starting to learn about the online world,
Mm.
which is quite different than, before I used to design things. And
Mm.
everybody wanted to buy it. Now in the, like everything from Walmart to QVC, etc.
Yeah.
Now in the online world, it's very different how you present yourself with social media and Facebook and Instagram
Yes.
and all of that. It's a very different way of
Yes.
reaching the people who may be interested
Yes.
in what you have to offer, whether or not it's products or services.
Yeah.
So I actually, Maria, I'm meant to just do my vitamins at the time when I was making the segue of closing down my design studio
Yeah.
because, as I mentioned, I was very sick
Yes.
and my hair was falling out.
Yes.
And the naturopath sort of made me this, compound,
Yeah.
said, try this because I was really, even though it was allopathic medicine that saved my life,
Mm. Yeah.
is a handshake between,
Yes.
sort of like Western medicine and Eastern medicine or
Yes.
naturopathy or
Yes.
however, alternative medicines, staying safe still.
Yes.
And so he was able to make a compound. It worked like crazy. And I said, I think people need this. So
Yeah.
I ended up saying, I'm going to develop a line. I was very lucky to be introduced to the manufacturer. I
Yeah.
developed, a small collection of
Yeah.
12 items to really help people be sort of their optimal best. Because whether or not you're an entrepreneur, whether or not you're in school, whether or not you are in
Yep.
corporate, you still need to be healthy and well to be able to show up.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
thought I'm just going to make this, and that's how my life is going to be. Except when I closed my design studio,
Mhm.
people started knocking on my door like, hi, Ed. Hi, hi. If you're not designing under your own name anymore, can you help me with mine? And I thought, okay, I'll hang out my shingle and I'll just make a website and say, this is what I do. Just
Yeah.
go and read it because,
Yeah.
after being in the trade for like over 40 years,
Mhm. Yeah.
like, how do you tell everybody in 10 minutes or less, right? Like, hi, I do this, hi, I do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought it would be all apparel people. Mm-mm. I realized I was an inadvertently, um, well, I do business plans, I do
Yeah.
business diagnostics, I build businesses, I talk about
Yeah.
insurances and how
Yeah.
to tighten your belt to make sure you've got enough margin or
Yeah.
enough extra money so that you have a bit of a cushion and
Yeah.
not have the stress. You can make great design decisions, etc. Have a
Yeah.
clear mind when you wake up in the
Yes.
morning. And so it ended up being um, business, it's
Yeah.
been services, it's been apparel, it's been
Yeah.
jewelry. I've worked in clean beauty. I've got a whiskey deal I'm working on. It's very, I
Your
mean,
Scottish roots.
talking about spirits. I wasn't really thinking about those spirits, but sometimes, it comes to however.
But that just shows how I suppose your business acumen, the word that I keep hearing, business strategist, business strategist, business strategist, and that might even not be too, or that might be too narrow of like a word for you, but it's sort of like based on what you're sharing in terms of fashion, some people today will think that, oh, it's just about designing your clothes and then that's it, not realizing the entire process that goes into it, choosing manufacturers, like you said, overheads, expenditure, expenses, making sure that everything, and you having run your own things for so long, you would understand the business, the complete scope of the business.
And I think that's what happens is there so many people will arrive on my doorstep and they
Yeah.
will have ideas and they're thinking, I have to do this and have to do that. But sometimes you have to take a 10,000-foot view and say,
Yes.
what are we doing? Like, for
Yeah.
instance, my clients is her product is patented in her country. Now
Yes.
I'm working with my patent, getting her to work with my patent attorneys because we're looking at global patents.
Yes.
And we said, okay, what's the big picture?
Yeah.
And we said everything that could possibly go under the global patent.
Yeah.
And then once we had that, we actually divided up into three patents. We're going
Yeah.
to do sequential, like one is lifestyle, one
Yeah.
is well, what we categorize as wellness, and one is actually a medical
Yeah.
patent we're going
Yeah.
after. But we're going to do it in order.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's really, and I think, when we talk about, how does business, entrepreneurship, the choices we
Mhm.
make, the way we show up, how it is can be informed by spirit. Because one of the things I really love is that, and it sounds really funny, but when I got sick so many years ago,
Yeah.
a lot of big worries, like how do you pay the bills? How do you deal with the ball of wax that you wound up? How do you unwind things? How
Yeah.
do you rebuild? And I have as an earth dog, because in the Chinese zodiac,
Oh.
I am an earth dog, so super
Okay.
loyal, but it means I also have the ability to worry about everything. I can worry about everything. So
Yeah.
even though I'm confident, I'm
Yeah.
like, is this good? Or
Yeah.
and so many moving parts, right? And I
Yeah.
think that many of us as entrepreneurs get overwhelmed. So
Yeah.
I would go to bed at night. I would say, okay, if I do not sleep, like if my worries keep me up,
Mm.
I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And I cannot
Yeah.
figure. So I was like, here's one spirit. Like his name for me is Daniel. I said, like, in a little box, I'm going to put all of my worries and all of the things that have gone on in the day. I'm going to put them
Yeah.
all in there and
Yeah.
give it to you. You figure it out. Please, please help me figure it out. And then I felt like my other spiritual sort of guide, her name is Annette. And I thought, okay. And basically, I felt like they collaborated at night while I was blissfully sleeping because, we must have made a decision when we're sitting up there and
Yes.
on our
Yeah.
clouds, right?
Yeah.
Thinking,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to jump off this cloud now and I'm going to come down here to
Yeah.
Earth. We really are supposed to manifest everything
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Even if we complain bitterly and we were
Yeah.
happier
Yeah.
up in the clouds,
Yeah.
this is where it's at. So I figured while I am sleeping
Yeah.
blissfully in my little meat suit
Yeah.
or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
that they can figure it out. So when I get up, they would have my book of the day. So I didn't have to worry about what happened behind me, like
No.
what has happened. I
Yeah.
didn't have to worry about what was going forward because whatever I needed to know at that moment
Yeah.
it would be in French we say allume, like, oh,
Yeah.
okay,
I
that's the
do.
thing I have to
Yeah.
do. Like, how do I think about, or I'll go to bed question, right? But I don't worry about it. They're figuring it out.
Can I just highlight that because I think that that's actually a brilliant practice for people so that they like so if you're someone who's listening or watching who's someone who's used to worrying about stuff and maybe having trouble sleeping, what you're sharing is actually a powerful ritual of put it into a box, a metaphysical box, and giving it to your spirit guide to take care of while you sleep so that the answers can arrive in the morning. That is, I just want to highlight that. Sorry for cutting you off, but that's
Yeah, I
brilliant.
also think that if we can work with spirit and work with, because we're pretty good at stuff, because guess what? Creator, or however you want to call
Yes.
him, her, it, them, they kind of know more than us.
No.
Right? I know more than that. So, but it's
Yeah.
kind of like the surrender, like
Yes.
surrender that I
Yes.
like when I was like, okay,
Yes.
okay, God. And it's so funny because, and I'll tell you, this is a vanity thing. So I'm signing my life away for my operation. I'm like
Yeah.
flat out, and they're putting in, in the
Yeah.
little,
The drip and the yeah. Yeah.
right. And the doctor says to me, and I turn and look at him. His name was Dr. Dan Deckelbaum. I mean, bless him. He stayed after sunset on Yom Kippur to save my life.
Wow. Yeah.
And I turn and I look at him, and he happens to have these gigantic blue eyes. So I figure, like, oh my God, it's Jesus. And I said to him, I said, Doctor, if I survive, do me one favor. You see this tummy? It is bikini ready. Please don't cut it up like a pumpkin. I figured like that would be to add insult to injury. I didn't want to be like having like a big X over my belly. And I literally woke up with three band-aids.
Oh
One,
wow.
one in my belly button and one over here. I mean, I was still very ill, so it did take a long time, but I didn't
Yeah.
have to deal with also,
Yeah.
the big burrow on my tummy,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so.
That was so that's that's so and so you can sort of say like you even if it was quote unquote vanity, it still was supportive in your journey. When did you when did your journey with spirituality begin or like how did it begin? Because it sounds like it may have started even before this. When did you like what is your is it from childhood or where is your earliest memory with it?
Absolutely. I feel like the moment I was born, I was connected to spirit. For me, in many
Okay.
ways, there are people who say, "Oh, God did something bad, or this something bad happened. How can that be?" And the fight, the
Yeah.
struggle one has, and like,
Yeah.
does he exist? Well, how could he exist if these
Yes.
horrible things are happening?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
how could he do it? Like,
Yeah.
um, but for me, it's always been a very profound belief,
Yeah.
and also, my father
Yeah.
was a Chinese Presbyterian um,
Okay.
a young man, and his father, my grandfather,
Yeah.
was a Chinese Presbyterian missionary,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and my mother, having her Scottish and indigenous and Chinese roots,
Yeah.
was actually brought up by like the school they went to was full of nuns, and so she was brought up Catholic.
Oh, okay.
So, but that was really the olden days. Now I'm trying to remember when they married, maybe in 1950. Like,
Okay.
It's a long time ago,
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
and she was excommunicated from the church.
Oh,
So, and she was very devout and she was like devastated. And so so then when I was finally born, because I was born in 58, when
yeah.
I was born, they were like, okay, what do we do with the kid? Like baptize, like Presbyterian, do we do Catholic?
Yeah.
And they said, you know what? They kind of agreed that, they were going to teach me everything they knew about God and spirit. And my mom was on my mother's side, very clairvoyant. My grandmother clairvoyant. My mom was clairvoyant, but my mom was never really grounded enough to feel confident. For her, every
Gotcha.
time she got a dream, she was fearful, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And so I feel like I kind of lived with spirit and angels and
Yeah.
guides from the beginning, and I did study a lot of different religion, so to speak.
Yeah.
My godfather was a good Ashkenazi Jewish gentleman called Sid Harrison. I mean, my mom didn't know that you're not supposed to name the kids, the same as someone who's living. But anyway, it
Oh,
was okay. And
yeah.
and, and I really loved him, and so I learned a lot about Judaism.
Yeah.
And if I were going to choose one, I probably would choose Judaism, but today it's not important to me.
Yeah.
Um, and so I ended up never choosing anything, but I consider myself really Christian.
Yeah. Okay. So
So
that's interesting. And also because it sounds like there's an embracing of the full expression of your spiritual self in whatever form that was when you were growing up, which is so beautiful. Um, how do you, um, two things I want to highlight. Number one is you mentioned the thing about people are saying, how can there be, you know, struggles and challenges if we believe in God? Personally, I think that a lot of what we see in the world is created by us, not by God. Like a lot of the issues that we are dealing with in the world could be solved by us if we came together in community. And also, if we look to the indigenous populations of the world who have the solutions to, I would probably say 99% of the issues that we as a globe are struggling with, climate change for one, and loneliness, all of these issues that we have, I think are connected to the um, denigration or the severing of our roots in whatever form they come, and wherever we may come from, whether we consider ourselves to be indigenous. I'm, born and raised, I'm Danish. As far as I understand, I don't have any quote unquote indigenous roots other than to the connection to this land. But I can see that when we live in synchronization or in alignment with nature, there's wholeness that happens, and a desire for,
connection.
yeah, and love for all people and all nations. So that's one thing I wanted to highlight in terms of what you said. The other thing was, the allopathic and the what some would call alternative medicine. To me, it's never either or, it's both and. It's in connection, in collaboration. It's in, yeah, in the both and that we find that strength. And whenever I work with clients, if they tell me that they have an ailment, I never tell them not to go see a doctor. I like go straight. I just recently had a medical issue with one of my eyes, and I mean, I was very grateful for the Danish healthcare system that allowed for me to be treated like within seconds almost. And I also looked at it from an energetic perspective as well, because it's both and. Go ahead.
It's so interesting. One of the books that I've had since forever, which I think was gifted to me by my first spiritual teacher, who
Yeah.
was Willa McLaren. And interestingly enough, at the time, because as we were talking about before we started this discussion,
Yeah.
was the fact that I didn't come to my indigenous roots. I didn't come to understand or my
Yeah.
indigenous roots and follow that until I was already in my late 50s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with Maquilla was indigenous. She was Mohawk and Scottish,
Yeah.
and the reason that I'm talking about her is because, she's the one who really taught me so much about the connection to earth and prayer and, how to be so much more in harmony.
Mm,
And
yes.
and
Harmony.
it's and she is the one who gave me the book by Louise Hayes, which
Mm.
and talking about looking at like and we have to be very careful with this, but sometimes, when, like, for instance, they would say sometimes when there is a broken bone, it's like, oh, do you need a break? Oh, if there's
Yes.
skin issues, what's coming under your skin? Oh,
Yes.
if something's going
Yes.
on in your liver, do we
Yes.
have it?
Yeah.
We know that our liver holds,
Yes.
anger and disappointment. And so
Yes.
what's going on here?
Yes. Yes. I will show you. I have a book that I like to refer to as Louise Hayes on steroids because it's I will just pick it up because I completely agree. And again, it's not about either or. It's to me it's about both and. So it's this one. It's called The Metaphysical Anatomy by Yvette Rose. And
Oh,
this is like I will share a link in the description. This is like it's a heavy book. It does not come in a Kindle form. I have checked. Um, but this has so many avenues for one to explore when we're diving into it. And again, it's not about either or, it's about both and. Because usually when things are in the physical realm, they've been there for a while. So yeah, so that one is go
what
ahead.
a lot of people don't know is that we have all these different energy fields. And like I'm really lucky. I go to see my friend, and she is, I mean, I arrived on her doorstep because she was a massotherapist, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
However, she's
yeah,
also happens to be a shaman and an
yeah,
energy worker, and she
yes,
does, the what do you call it, like the tuning forks.
yes,
She
yes,
like, but she's also a biochemist and uh,
yes,
she went back and did osteopathy, so he understands
wonderful.
all of those stuff. So I go in for once a month, whether or not I need it, for a tune-up,
Yes,
make sure
yes,
like
yes,
the whole
yes,
thing working well,
yeah,
because this is
yeah,
what I kind of drive around in the world, and I want to
yeah.
show up my best self, right?
Yes, absolutely. And again, both and I love that she's a biochemist. One of the people that I had a sacred conversation with is a medical doctor named Tobias. His name is Dr. Tobias. He's a medical doctor and now he's a researcher, but he conducted the world largest, but it was in Denmark, but the world largest experiment or not experiment research on or study on spiritual needs in Denmark and uncovered that out of the thousands of people who replied to his survey, about I think it was 82 or 83% of people reporting having had a spiritual need within the last month. And what they're going to be doing with that study and a lot of the data and stuff is going to be tailoring solutions for the Danish healthcare system that supports people because what they found, and this is actually from, I believe this is from American studies, they showed that, or they'd seen that people with faith in the in a healthcare situation. Go ahead.
Hold on, hold that thought.
Is that your FedEx? Yeah. So before we came on, Cydney did warn me that she may be receiving some FedEx, and that is what is happening right now. So in case you're listening to this via podcast, Cydney has run to the door and is getting a FedEx. So we're just gonna hold for just a second and wait until she comes back. And here we go. Sydney's coming. Sydney's coming. I just told people that you were going to get your FedEx, and that's totally fine. That's totally fine. You got your stuff. Great. No, so as I was saying, what they have found was that people who reported having some sort of faith, whether it was religious or not, the expenditure I think was about $2,400 per person, whereas those who reported not having a faith of any kind, I think it was like $4,000 or $6,000. So the difference between, yes, exactly. And so when you work for the government or like on a national level, you can very quickly do the math of like if people have faith and if we in the healthcare system start supporting people in a different way with things that are not necessarily just physical, can we then support, like, will people get better, faster, and in a better way? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
You know,
that's a great conversation I had with him. And he happens to be a Reiki master as well. So it's like, yeah. Go ahead.
so
You were going to say
he
something?
understands energy. And I think that
Yeah.
when as you were saying, when we work with the whole body, it's so much, things can be so much more in sync. And I
Yes.
think that, sometimes people say to me, oh, Sid, you're so organized. You get things done so well or so fast or what have you. And I will write that book this year. I have an organizational book that I want to write.
Ooh.
I have a working title. It's called The Other Big O, Organizational Skills.
Oh, I love that. I love that. You got to share that with me when it's out. We'll drop a link.
I will. And it's definitely, we're stepping into, 2025, and that's back at the top of my list.
I
But
love the
what's
title.
interesting is that, in terms of being organized, so what was I going to say about being organized? So he was talking about, wait a minute.
Is it connected to the surrender you were talking about earlier and like harmony that you were talking about?
No, no. I'm gonna have forgotten my thought for the moment, but there's something about being organized that
Yeah.
it is also, oh, I know what it is. It's
Go
about,
ahead.
we were talking earlier about surrender.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about that again because that's really, I think surrender and in healing is
Yeah.
also because we struggle, like as spiritual beings who have arrived here on earth, we struggle so much. And
Mm,
sometimes we don't need to struggle so much. And we
mm,
have to think about, it's not that energy is not, um, physical energy
mm,
is finite.
mm.
Energy is not finite, right? So the balance of, it's sort of like being on the roller coaster. Well, the
Yeah.
roller coaster won't go unless we let the wheels run. So I think of the surrender, a little bit of the letting the wheels go,
Momentum.
not
Yeah.
because it's not because we want to let go, right? And so I think that sometimes I get things done quicker
Yeah.
because I spend less time struggling.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah.
like when I see friends or family or clients struggling so much, it's
Yes.
like, geez, if you could just sort of like surrender a little bit and move with it,
Yes.
things are going to go forward easier.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you won't suffer so much.
But what I've found is in the later years, things have begun being easier and easier for me the more that I have surrendered my own ideas of what I'm supposed to do, how I'm supposed to do it, and who I'm supposed to do it with. The more I abandon, I suppose, a worldview notion of this is what success looks like, this is what it's meant to be. And the more I lean into where am I being guided towards, what am I being, what is showing up for me, what is present, how can I be in alignment? Because for me, energetically align that. That's like a daily practice for me. And the more I do that, the more there is like I don't have to know my 10-year plan in order for me to arrive because things just start to unfold.
Right.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense? And
And
yeah,
I think it's again the balance between
yes,
the the physical and the spiritual. And I think that like I do have, I mean, I know where I want to be in 10 years,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And I
yeah,
can map it out because you're supposed to fish,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
As
yeah,
you're going
yeah,
along. And those are like, oh, how do I get there? These are the things I should do.
yeah,
And you keep talking about the big and.
yeah,
we need to work with spirit to
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
us, smooth the way, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I should maybe mention that I'm a fire dragon. I don't know if that just to warn you, maybe I should have, yeah, maybe I should have put that in as a warning or disclaimer before we began. So when you in terms of your business and because you mentioned the putting in the box, which I think is a brilliant ritual, how have you ha if at all, what practices or like daily or monthly or weekly or yearly practices have you developed that you see supporting you in your, I suppose, spiritual practices that you see supporting you in your work and business?
Couple of different ways. I actually, funnily enough, because I was a competitive figure skater, which meant that I would get up at 4:30. I would have to be at the breakfast table by 4:45.
Yeah.
I would need to be finished breakfast at 5 o'clock. At
Mhm.
5:15, I need to be getting dressed and, grabbing my stuff. So my whole life has been, like 15-minute increments.
Yeah.
But in my legacy years,
Yeah.
because I am a tender 66 now.
Wow.
I think that I deserve to wake up when I want to, which
Yeah.
is around 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I got up then, except that I must have really loved skating. And I think that it's kind of I'm not going to say going with the flow, but I hang out with my birds. As I mentioned to you, unfortunately, one of my birdies passed this last week. And so, poor, if you can hear poor Henrietta, flock calling for, her buddy. So I hang out with I generally hang out with the birds. I get up, I let the birds out, they fly around in tandem, and my puppy, who is now quietly somewhere, uh, she plays with them on my little two-sided two-seater.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
walk across the back of my chair, the birds, and Shiloh is usually here, and so I really like to have um uh, what I'm going to call sacred puttering in the morning.
It sounds like communion as well. It's also sacred communion between your community, like your spiritual communities in some way. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah, yeah,
I have breakfast and, I, sort of go through the ritual of making
yeah,
sure that everything is sort of like the way it needs to
yeah,
be. And I read my morning prayers, and then I
yeah,
think about, um, all the things that I have, and I
yeah.
reorganize myself because I do think actually, talking about the sacred word, I think being organized is a sacred practice.
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
and it frames my world. And so when we talk about how do I use that for my clients,
Yeah,
it could be like one of the things, again, they usually arrive on my doorstep and they're kind of all mixed up and they're all excited and have all these ideas, right? But we just need to nail it all down. So
yeah,
basically, I always start with what I call the action plan.
yeah,
It's like tell mama everything,
yeah, yeah,
and we're going
yeah,
to sort it into priorities about what
yes,
we can do now, what
yeah,
we're going to put into,
yeah,
hold, maybe doing a little bit
yeah,
later.
yeah,
And then I literally do a project management, all of the things that have to be done, whether or not I'm involved in it or not. And
yeah,
then we put, like I'm going to do it, you're going to do it, someone's going to do it,
yeah, yeah,
and then I map it out onto a timeline. So
yes, yes,
nothing gets out of place. It's a
no,
dynamic plan that means
yeah,
that if we didn't do it, it's okay. There's no
yeah,
panic. We'll diarize it forward to the following week, or
yes,
if someone can't do it, one of the other team members
yes,
for that project will
yes, yeah.
take.
And what you share is like the tiny steps, because that I think that that's very often missed when it comes to business, because people see the big picture, but they don't realize all of the tiny steps that we do week by week by week by. Go ahead.
Within the big picture.
Exactly. 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 Yes.
So this way it takes the panic and the fear and the overwhelm out.
Yes.
And we just have to do what's now.
Yes.
And then when someone starts spinning off, like, whoa, we have to do this
Yes.
first.
Yes.
and it's not obvious which things can happen at the same time,
Mm,
which ones have to be sequential.
mm,
So when in my biggest partnership, we were doing $36 million a year.
yeah.
500,000 pieces were produced per month between domestic and import. Over 200 different original styles were going through the system
Yeah.
every single month. It's a
Wow.
lot of stuff and I had, it doesn't sound like that much, but I had uh, assistant designers, I had
Yeah.
pattern makers, I had sample makers,
Yeah.
I had, like the cutters, I had a big cutting room, I had the packing room, I
Yeah.
had partners, like it was a big machine,
Yeah. Yeah.
and how do you make all the things work, like
Oil.
cupcake, you
Yes.
know?
Oil. Yeah. Oil in the machine. Yeah. All the wheels in the machine. Yeah. Work seamlessly. Yeah. Yeah. And also understanding that one department is nothing without the other. That's the holistic perspective, right? And coming from that part. Sorry, did I cut you off? I just want to leave the floor.
No, it's just but I think that, you were asking me like how do we sort of like deal with that? And I
Yeah.
think it's about we have to acknowledge
Yeah.
and also, like sort it all out. And that
Yeah.
way things can move forward, and it
Yeah.
takes longer than as quickly as we would like it in this digital age. Oh, and talking about digital,
Yes.
um, I also realized that my clients were so busy with the product development and
Yes.
so busy with me teaching them about, do you have your insurance? Do we have our like product liabilities? All these different funny things
Yes.
like regulatory things from shipping in and out from country to
Yes.
country. How do we streamline this?
Yes.
Uh, that then we live in this digital world.
Yes.
They would need I realized they needed support. How to build a Facebook page? How do you connect your
Yes.
Instagram? How do you do
Yes.
TikTok? How do
Yes.
like, I mean, I spent 15 years on TV, so I know
Yeah.
how to present myself,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so I teach others how to. So
Yeah.
I ended up with my own small team. We do SEO blogs so that,
Yeah.
it can make, the Google rankings like rank higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
I have a fabulous social media gal
Yeah.
who's fabulous in terms of her expertise in doing both graphics and
Yes.
what it need to be,
Yeah.
and a fractional CMO who does he does everything from funnels to marketing, and
Wow.
we try to keep it as tight as possible
Yeah.
because everything is expensive when
Yeah.
you are a startup.
Yes. 100%. Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
I
there's a lot to learn.
inadvertently built
Yeah.
something as a
Yeah.
solution,
Yeah.
not only for myself, but for my clients so
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
launch, you
Yeah.
know?
That's beautiful. And again, it's holistic. And I sense that there's a commitment and a level of heart in it as well. And that's also who I know you to be, is there is that level of heart in it. It's not, it's, yeah, I suppose holistic. In terms of, and again, only if you want to share. I know that you mentioned briefly your indigenous background, and I know that in recent years that you have sort of found your way into that community. Um, would you share a little bit about how that journey has been? Because you mentioned your parents being of different, your father being Presbyterian, your mother being Catholic, but then there's also this indigenous side of you, and that was
Right.
from your mother's. How?
Yeah. Um, there was always rumors like when, we're between me, I'm an only child. So between me and my cousins, we were like, oh, we heard about that. But whenever we asked the adults in the room, it was like, oh no, we're not. Oh, like forget that. Like that's nothing, that's not
Yeah,
true. Or they just, poo-pooed it.
yeah,
It wasn't to be discussed.
yeah,
But on my father's side and on my mother's side,
yeah,
eldest cousins, some of my cousins from the East Coast moved to the West Coast, and so the two
yeah.
elder cousins one was an accountant, one needed accounting. So the two elder cousins were talking one day over, I guess, doing the books, and
Accounting.
you know, putting things in order. And they were talking about, like, the one on the East Coast was talking about the fact that their mother was Métis, that, but they couldn't prove it. So she was French and Métis, but
Yeah.
because apparently the church burned down. And then the other cousin on the other side is my eldest cousin, Chris. He said, oh yes, well, we're First Nations. So the two cousins confirmed it to each other. And I'm like, all right, like, how come nobody told me, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I called my cousin Chris,
Yeah.
said, okay, so fess up, he said, yeah, we're First Nations Yale. And he said, in fact, you're coming to Vancouver, because I used to go there every 6 months or every year, go home. I
Yeah.
finally, can you imagine, just booked my first trip to Vancouver in 5 years, because
Wow.
the
COVID.
last time I went was
Yeah.
pre-pandemic, and then
Yeah.
pandemic, and then everybody rebuilding,
Yeah. Good.
lives.
Yes.
But he said, when you come out, I'll arrange for, a meeting with the chief of Yale and the council members, or the band member, not band members, but the council members,
Yeah.
and we'll drive up and go and meet some people. He says, because as an accountant, he had been doing work in the different communities, like Seabird and Shiam, and so he knew, and he had met some of our cousins, and my cousins, now that I know them, said, "Oh yeah, that Chinese guy," because we do look a little bit more
Oh,
Asian than we do anything else.
okay. Yeah.
So for them, that he looked like the Chinese guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And so we did, when I flew out, we drove up and we got to meet the chief, and the chief said, "Well, but we don't think you guys are Yale. It's just my grandmother was last known in Yale.
Gotcha.
That's where the family was last known. So my cousin assumed that she was with the Yale band, but they
Yeah.
couldn't find anything. But the chief did say to me, said, because we brought up pictures and information as much as possible, and he did say to one of the council um, members, he said, Pedro, your mom is an elder. Can you ask her if she'll speak to Cydney, so maybe she can help? Well,
Mm.
his mother, Pedro's mom, Rosemary, and I became dear, dear friends. She taught me about uh, sacred prayer,
Yeah.
the burnings, and about who I may or may not be related to.
Mm.
And I just kept going back to Vancouver and going up and down the canyon, going
Mm.
to the different bands and talking to different people, trying to
Mm.
make connections. And I was sent to Yale First Nation, sent me to Stalo Nation, which is a very big band
Mm.
in Vancouver,
Mm.
in Chilliwack. And because they're such a big band, they had a senior genealogy department.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
And they found my grandmother on the, I think, 1921 census records, and all of the mother and the father, my great grandparents,
Wow.
um, and not all the children, because there were 10 children.
Yeah.
Ultimately there were 11. We found an 11th one after.
Uh-huh.
And the whole thing populated. So Stalo Nation was able to give me um, my, what they call, my pedigree, and
Yeah.
then the related families. And I think I had over 100 living Indigenous relatives. But as my Indigenous cousins have said to me, Auntie, we don't have family trees. We have family forests, because, like, the cousin that I'm thinking of, he has 18 brothers and sisters.
Yeah. Yeah. So that makes a forest, not just a tree.
Yeah.
That makes
So,
sense.
and then with that, I finally was able, I think during the pandemic, I was getting all of my papers together, because then you have to have, the government asks you, um, uh,
The
birth
Canadian one.
certificates, death certificates, marriage certificates, all of that stuff. And you have to keep sending stuff in, and you get a
Yeah.
number, because I fell under what was called a Bill C-31,
Okay.
which, because there was an inequality where, um, many years ago, if there were indigenous people and one married out.
Yeah.
So what happened was my great grandmother, Sarah,
Yeah.
she she had 10, she and great grandfather Felix, they had 10 children. And
Yeah.
then
Oh,
when she remarried, she married out of the
gotcha.
indigenous community. So she married
Gotcha.
a Ukrainian guy
Yeah.
who lived in Yale. And so she lost her status.
Ah, yeah.
You see, so it was I fall under like, and I was a grandchild
Yeah.
of an what they call an enfranchised
Yeah.
indigenous person. So when they were able, and then I was finally recognized by one of the in my travels up and down,
Yeah.
the canyon, by one of the elders in one of the in the Inklakatma tribal council, who said, "Yes, you are. You are an Angus. Like I know I'm an Angus, but said these are your cousins, and this is." And he read my whole thing, and it was like reading history for him, like a storybooks. And so he wrote me a letter of acceptance, and the government finally accepted. And because I actually wanted my Indian status. It's
Yes.
historically, it's not a beautiful thing. I can tell you that the Indian Act is kind of ugly,
Yeah.
and the colonialism and things like that. But
Yeah.
I wanted it, and I
Yes.
have up getting not only my indigenous, my Indian status, but and I have a band. I'm associated to a band. I had to do a band transfer because the government put me in the wrong band. We're Inklakatma, which there's about 16 bands,
Yeah.
and there's a creator story about that. We were all together and we thought we were fancy and we're trying to build a bridge over to creator.
Mm.
And apparently, and he said, don't do that. And they said, oh, yeah, we won't do it. And then they
Oh,
started
better.
building it anyway. And so
Yeah.
he split us all up, different dialects and all of that. But our territories literally go from, I'm going to say around Kamloops all
Yeah.
the way down to the Skagit Valley in Washington in the US and
Wow.
over the island. My grandmother, Mabel Angus, was actually born in Nanaimo. On the island, and she would have gone to residential school, which would have meant she was probably starved and beaten and raped. And she was 18 when she came to Vancouver to marry my Chinese grandpa. And we think they made an agreement. Okay, we are going to be a Chinese and Scottish family now
Yeah.
because we were already, our indigenous family was already mixed
Yeah.
Scottish because
Yes.
they the railroads and you
Yeah.
know so they say that our
Yeah.
family, like gold passes on the railroads because of
Yeah.
their involvement. So, but
Um,
yeah, it's been a journey.
and how has that been for you in terms of your um spirituality? Because I assume that not everything has been pretty, but a lot of it must also have been a lot of celebration as well. So how has that been for you, the development of that throughout? I don't know if you've kept your faith or like what has been driving you, do you think, through that?
I think that my first thoughts were, I want to recognize this part of me.
Mm.
And it was important because that was a really important piece of my roots. And
Yes.
I wanted to honor my great grandmother and I
Yeah.
wanted to honor my grandmother. And I felt that, when, again, we talked earlier about things being acknowledged. When
Yes.
you can acknowledge it, you can work with it.
Yes.
And it's interesting because with all of the traumatic things that have happened to our indigenous communities, I remember listening to one of the elders speak. I think his name was Philippe Archambault, if I have his name right. He was speaking at one of the Truth and Reconciliation days, and
Yeah.
said we need to acknowledge all of the ugly stuff, but we can't stay in that energy.
No.
We need to acknowledge it, and then we have to figure out what can we do. Like
Yes.
how can we show up and how do we move forward? Because if you just hang out in the ugliness of what happened,
Yeah.
it will die,
It'll fast. Yeah.
And one of my um relatives, he was actually instrumental in one of the first um, legal cases where there was he was being abused, and so were
Yeah.
a number of his
Yeah.
schoolmates.
Yeah.
And um, because you bury the memories and then they come up later, and then things happen.
Yeah.
Um, Something traumatic happened later in his married life.
Yeah.
And then it just came out, and he said it to the policeman who was arriving on his doorstep, and the policeman believed him.
Oh.
So they were one of the first cases that went. But when they went to court, the
Yeah.
re-traumatization, like Willie survived, but a couple of his classmates, they couldn't bear it.
Yeah.
And to go back into that energy was too much for them. And they were losses. I mean, there were
Yeah.
a couple of suicides.
Yeah.
And so trauma takes a long time to,
Yeah. And
heal.
even now we know, we understand when we understand trauma, genetically, it passes through, it's actually, it's passed on through generations. And it's,
Seven, I think they say it's seven.
we have like in Denmark, and now we have this huge cage again because we've colonized Greenland, the Greenlandic Inuits, and at the time of this recording, there's a huge thing going on because Trump has essentially said that he wants to invade Greenland, which is wild. But even in Denmark, in my perspective, there hasn't been enough of a reconciliation. There's not a repayment. There's no like we've only just scratched the surface in terms of it. So yeah, I can completely understand how that can be. So because again, if you cut off, and this is one of the things that I talk with Keone, who's a native Hawaiian as well, about how they were also cut off from their sources and from their roots. And when that happens, um, you're quote unquote lost. Like yeah, I can so imagine that. One of the things that you've mentioned a couple of times has to do with prayer. Can you share how you use prayer in your life or in your work, in your business, just in your practice?
Well, I think that it's important, to get grounded. I think that we all, I'm going to say, operate here on Mother Earth. If we're grounded and centered, we're
Mhm.
in a much better condition to go out there in the
Yes.
world,
Yes.
whether, to do the things that we want to do. And I think that we arrive here with gifts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of our job to develop these gifts. It's not like I have this, talking about the fact that I have the ability to worry about everything. Like I have this fear that I will arrive at the pearly gates and say, I didn't do what I came here to do. Like that would be so annoying. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I think about what each of us, the tremendous gifts we've been
Yeah.
given
Yeah.
or that we came with,
Yeah.
um, I think that prayer has helped me stay centered, be grounded, so I can do this. So I can do this. And that's really part of my legacy work, which is I've had great gifts in terms of having been an elite athlete, having been, an international fashion designer.
Yeah.
And now it's time for me to share knowledge. Now it's time
Yeah.
for me to help others who have ideas
Yes.
and gifts
Yeah.
to bring their ideas to life because from an ego point of view I don't need it anymore. I don't need to say, hey, I'm Cydney Mar, or
Yeah.
say, present myself on some
Yeah.
TV stage, somewhere in the world saying, that I designed this. I
Yeah.
mean, it's really not important to me.
No.
And it keeps me, very happily
Yeah.
amused.
Yeah. You shared, and this is I want to mention because I think that's really important as well in terms of, and you started out by saying this, and you've also touched on a few times the that it is through. I once heard this, I think it was Marianne Williamson who said, God cannot do for you what they can. I've changed it today because I don't resonate with the word he, but what they cannot do through you. And that sort of like, I was like, whoa, because it is through my physical representation here on earth. Because I've had times in my life where I just wanted to take off and being like, see you suckers, like I don't wanna, I don't wanna be here. Because
Here.
yes, being a spiritual being, having a human experience can be really difficult. However, as I've worked through my stuff, I've come to love this physical vessel for what it allows me to do. And you've touched on, seeing getting the tune-up every month. I do the same because it's not when there's anything wrong. It's just to be energy, and also that's why I do energetic alignment on a daily basis, is to make sure that my physical vessel is at its big peak. But you also shared, because I know that you have Cydney Mar wellness products, like which is for that, which I love because both, like you said, as whether you are an athlete or just work a corporate job, or if you're an entrepreneur, having your physical vessel be in the best
Right?
possible shape. Go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know where I'm
Well,
going.
having it in top shape, I mean, as you said, whether or not it's a mom who has a very stressful mom job of making
Yeah.
sure the family is together, she needs to have her
Yes,
brain organized,
yes,
she has tons of schedules to do.
yes, yes,
Like
yes,
it's work, right?
yes, yeah, oh, yes,
The doctors and lawyers or accountants and coming home and then realizing they have files to do. They come home, they have their supper, they might have a glass of wine, and then they're going to be even more tired. So,
yeah,
it's very funny because I have one product, it's called Energetic Body and Mind. It's an adrenal support because in this world, we're all way too stressed. And our adrenals are for, if you and I were walking across the street,
yeah,
it's for when a truck comes,
yeah,
careening around the corner, we're going to grab each other, and that adrenals are for
yes,
to take us out of
yeah,
harm's way,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But adrenals are not for everyday use. And
no,
people end up with these adrenals, and that's why they can't sleep at night because they're like, we're on alert, we're on alert, we're on alert, what's going to happen, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
And so this product that we developed,
yeah,
it naturally brings down the
yeah,
adrenals. It gives you a boost of
yeah,
energy.
yeah,
And the adrenals say, oh, I guess we're not needed.
yeah,
Naturally relax. You
yeah,
get a better night's sleep and you have great mental acuity. So
yes,
whether or not it's files you do at nighttime that you need your brains to work at, or whether or not it's New Year's Eve and you just want to make sure that you're not falling asleep in your soup, you know?
yeah, yeah. And I like to always say that there's a reason why sleep deprivation is on the torture list. Because it just messes up so much stuff when we're unable to sleep. And I'm sure that there's a bunch of stuff that we don't know spiritually in terms of where we go and how we recharge and all that and during sleep. So I just wanted to highlight that because I really a lot of spirituality can go into being like, oh, we just want to be out there and we want to open the upper chakras and we just want to be like, oh, but it's like if you're not physically connected and grounded into earth, you're not able to, like you say, be who you're meant to be, give your gifts to the world. It is through this vessel that we can do that.
I think we pick up energy because we are
Yes.
energetic beings. I mean,
Yeah.
talking about just physical practices or
Yes.
like
Yes.
spiritual slash physical practices. One of the things Maquilla taught me was like she said that our aura actually picks up energy. Like let's say that we've gone somewhere where and someone's been really negative, and that those negative bits of energy actually kind of like our like Velcro kind of stick on our
Yes.
energy.
Yeah.
And only way to get rid of it is to stand in a shower and
Yeah.
let the aura actually, when you get wet, the aura
Yeah.
folds in and all of that stuff just it's there's a reason why
Yeah.
they do smudge. There's a reason why you do this to
Yes. Yes.
brush off
Yes.
energy
Yes.
or like dirt on your sweater,
Yes.
and that is like the cleansing
Yeah.
of energy is really important.
Yeah.
It's what we call spiritual hygiene,
Yes.
really
Yes.
super important so that you can show up being bright and shiny. And
Yes.
just going back to that, talking about sleeping well enough, our brains are like car motors, right? And they can get overheated.
Mm.
So if you don't sleep enough, what's interesting is that the brain actually cools off if you sleep like your 7 or 8 hours. It cools
Mm.
off. Imagine this,
Mm.
cools off. Guess what? It shrinks.
Yes.
And that means that the fluids in your brain can circulate better and it flushes out all of the toxins and
Oh,
bits of negative. That is why when you get a good night's sleep, you can wake
yes.
up you don't wake up with a stuffy head where your brain is like all puffed up.
Yeah.
Um, you're clear,
Yeah.
you're rested,
Yeah.
uh, and
Nourished. Yeah. Nourished, I like to say. Yeah.
yeah.
And also, like, that's like what you describe in terms of the auric field. That's why I do energetic alignment on a daily basis. Like, I check my energy every morning. Like, for me, it's like brushing my teeth now. It's like in the beginning, there was a quote unquote a lot that was in my energy. These days, it's rare for me to have something. The other day, why was it? Oh, the other day I just started I got kettlebells over Christmas for like kettlebells for exercise, and I just started. And then the next day, I mean, I was so sore. I was sore in places that I forgot was there. And when I checked the layers of my auric field, my physical layer was not in full flow and alignment. And I was like, what? And then I realized, oh, it's because I am hurting. Like, so I released the resistance and the reverse energy, and then I was fine. I was still feeling sore, but energetically I was in place. So that makes so much sense. Tiffany, we time has flown. Final question, I suppose, is what is mastery to you?
Oh my goodness. I feel almost unprepared for this question. Such a big
I
question.
maybe should start warning people about this question. But like describing your age and what you do, there's so much mastery in you. I hear all that already. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but yeah.
It's interesting. I think a lot about being capable. Uh,
Hmm.
I think it's really important, like in my morning prayers and the things that I sort of peruse, I
Hmm.
think that it's important, one of the things I've said to myself is I really want to show up as a good human.
Hmm.
And I think that when you ask me that question about mastery, it's about am I being mindful of my own energy? Am I being mindful of my skills? Like also, as I was setting out, my goals for this year,
Hmm.
on the page where it says things I want to learn,
Hmm.
I have started learning my indigenous language, which is Inklakatma. And Chuck, my bird who passed away, he actually spoke three languages. He spoke some Inklakatma. He just heard me and he would started repeating, so I would hear him say like Henkla, Yedek Shwikan, in between I love you and good morning. And he was really a sweetheart. But I think mastery is like up leveling your skill sets, whether or not, like you were just saying on a physical level, like those
Yeah.
kettlebells kind of got you, right? But that's a physical thing. And then we have to like also be mindful of our emotional
Yes.
states, right? So
Yes.
that we aren't reactive, that we can be a little bit
Yes.
discerning about
Yes.
how, like, is this my energy or is this their energy? I
Yes.
think that's really important. So
Yes.
mastery of yourself and
Yes.
then being able to share that. So I think that, I feel like so much that I'm in um,
Mm.
my legacy years. And
Mm.
even though there are
Mm.
some times I want to go and, you could,
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
um that we go, oh wait, let's take a step back,
yeah,
let's take a look at this,
yeah, yeah.
and
That's
I
mastery.
think then that is that's also something we can share
Mm.
with those, whether or not they're friends, family, or our clients,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
to show up as better humans.
yeah, yeah. That's beautiful in terms of mastery. Show up as better humans and do it by the demonstration of how we live and how we are, rather than just what we're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything else that's on your heart or your mind, or are we complete?
No, I think we're pretty complete. We've had a really fun conversation about, life, about spirit, about our legacy work, what our purpose is. So it's been really quite marvelous. Thank you.
Yes, it has. Thank you so much, Sydney, for being here with me today. What I will do is I will share links to everything that Sydney has talked about. So I encourage you to go follow and connect and all these things that will be in the show notes. To everyone who's listening or watching, thank you so much for having joined with us today. Lots of love. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
That is what I had for you in today's episode of Mastery with Maria Saraphina. I hope it served you well. For all the deeds and details, click the link in the description and help me spread the love of this transmission by sharing it with a friend or on social media, or leave me a comment or review. Have a wonderful day. God bless.